I can just continue with the next part of these elements would be called as diaphragm type. This one surely is one of the most typical and common one for case of measuring the pressure which is less than 1 bar. Maybe, for example, for the pressure which are really close to the amount of atmosphere pressure, these items would be really applicable. Sometimes you do need to measure the amount of pressure which is a little bit close to vacuum situation or condition. I mean, for example, minus 0.1 bar or minus 0.25 bar. For these types of amount, these items are really applicable and versatile. So let me just draw it to some extent. Maybe you can just remind something in your mind based on the diaphragm seal or things like that, because actually frankly speaking, I tell you that the shape of this sensor is really close to the diaphragm seal that I just mentioned before. I can just draw it in this case. Let me just change the color of my marker. This is the part of the sensor. It's a diaphragm here. Here we have the gauge, this case. And on the diaphragm, you can find a really little lever or rod or things like that. Actually, it's connected to the spring, and then you have the pointer too. This is just the dial. And here, it's the entry part of the fluid. I just mentioned fluid here for you. So it means that when the fluid just comes through it, it's just gonna contact with this diaphragm, and it's just gonna be push it. So the more push of this diaphragm causes that the more movement or force to the rod which is connected to the spring. Surely in this case the pointer just comes forward. This is actually the performance or the function of these items, and it's clearly that the time that the fluid pressure is going to be decreased, for example, to case of vacuum or things like that. For sure, the diaphragm comes just down. That's for sure. The pointer comes back, and it reaches to the vacuum amount or vacuum graduation part of the dial too. I can just tell you that the accuracy of these types of gauges is something just like between plus and minus 1.6 up to, for example, 2% of full span. But we do have some types of diaphragm gauges in the industry with the accuracy better than this amount too. For example, 1% of full span. So it's better for you to consult with your manufacturer and supplier if you want to find out about the correct and the best accuracy of the device. For sure, the time that you use these types of sensors in industry, there is no need for you to consider any diaphragm seal for case of high viscosity or abrasion or even cryogenic services, because this item has been totally protected by this diaphragm, so there is no need to put another diaphragm for these items. I want to tell you that the limitation of measuring pressure by means of this device is totally limited as compared with the previous thing that we mentioned for you and stated. Here, I can just mention that the range is just around maybe 300 or maximum 360 pound square of inches. It's the thing that we shall have, something just like between maybe minus 1 up to something just like maybe 25 bar. It's maybe the widest range that we can have in the industry, but it's not more than 25, because in this case the resistance of the diaphragm against the fluid must be taken into consideration as well. The more pressure here, the more possible damages on the diaphragm. So that's for sure, the diaphragm has a really limited tolerance or resistance for this case. I need to emphasize again that for the pressure which is really close to the pressure of the atmosphere, or even for case of vacuum or things like that, or even maybe the time that you have some types of suspension particles, or some slurry in your fluid, it's better to use these types of element for pressure gauge.